Which ad was your trigger to get into marketing and media business, or to rephrase, how did you end up in the business?
Okay, so many years ago when I was a child, I used to watch the British Airways adverts on TV, and they were some of the best things I'd ever seen when I was a child. Just big, long, beautiful advertising that really engaged with me and made me, even though I was 10, made me want to fly and made me want to, and I still have a passion for flying now. And when I saw those ads, I then started to work, well, how do you make those ads? Who makes those ads? And I started doing my research, and I realised that Saatchi & Saatchi were the biggest ad agency at the time. And I set my heart absolutely on, I said, that's where I'm going to work. And when I went to university, I met the Saatchi & Saatchi team. They came and did a speech at our university.
Were you disappointed? You know, when you had
No, they were heroes. They were like, and I'm still friends with both of them now. Marcus Peffers and Tim Duffy, they run M&C Saatchi. And they were brilliant. They really inspired me. They engaged with me. They invited me to London to come and meet them. So I built this relationship up with Saatchi's. And then when the graduate training scheme came up, I applied for it and I got through as a graduate trainee. And that was my dream.
Wow.
And I was there for 6.5 years and loved every minute of it.
Great. So what makes a great leader? We heard something about it on your presentation. Can anybody learn how to be a leader, or do you have to be born with it in you?
No, absolutely not. So for me, the whole purpose of what I present today is that I believe anyone can be a leader. Everyone has it in them to be a great leader and indeed to be an accelerated leader. The first step is really wanting to take the journey, so moving away from being a manager and moving into being a leader. And then as I talk today, it's about asking the why, asking 3 questions about why you should be a leader, what your key strengths are, and then why do I exist as a leader. Building the why, and then using some of the techniques that I shared today, the creating that positive disruption in an organisation, to get people behind you, to empower them, to have the business questions answered and keep the business fresh and on its toes, and to build a culture that allows people to be the best that they can possibly be. And if you do that, then you will actually accelerate business. It's proven to be a trusted technique in accelerating, like the likes of Nike, the likes of Levi's, the likes of Diesel.
Do you have to live for and on your work to be a great leader? And can you ever be totally disconnected if you are like, if you are a leader in your company or something like that? You mentioned that like reading your emails in 3 in the morning, that's not the way you should do it. So how can you actually disconnect from your work? What are the tools to do it?
Well, I think it's pretty straightforward, and it's within the behaviours that I talked about. The always open, always on thing for me is incredibly important. And what that means is that you are mindful in any given situation. So there is a time to be looking at your emails and a time to look at your iPhone, and there's a time not to be. And it's being able to define those moments in your life where you need to be focused on something completely different, to get a completely different mind state and a different energy, to come up with a completely different insight that you never thought possible. For instance, this morning, okay, this is a small example. My razor broke this morning, and I shave my head every single day. And I stood there and went, oh my God, what am I going to do? And I stopped for a minute and went, actually, this is quite interesting. So I got the razor and I started literally stroking it on my head. And it made me think, this is a new way of actually using a razor. Why do I need a big handle to do all that? It felt much more tactile. So I'm thinking of, there must be a new way of like a little handle and you actually use it like a comb on your head. So in that moment, I was very mindful of how am I going to get through this problem, reframe the problem, and actually came out with a small business idea. Who knows if I'm going to do it or not? But I wasn't worrying about this presentation. I wasn't, today it was about, I've done all the stuff I need to do and rehearse the presentation. That's out of the way. If you keep focusing on all those things, you just get so embroiled and so sucked into one thing that you forget everything else that's going on. And as a leader, you need to be open and aware to people's feelings, your own self-awareness, your emotional intelligence. And so many people focus on everything else. It's like family and work, and they say family and work are 2 separate things. Well, no, they don't have to be. Actually, you should take the principles that you believe, you should take your why into your family life and be able to apply the same amount of love, attention, mindfulness in your family world as you do in your work world, but just understand when it's different. So switch off and allow that to happen and put your phone away.
That's a good advice. I'm going to take it. DJing and photography, tell me a bit more about that careers.
Okay, so they both started off as hobbies and ended up as, kind of professional things. My DJ, my best friend is a DJ, still is. We set up a production. Oh, Sam Holt, Copyright Productions. I'll give him a plug. And he taught me how to DJ one weekend, and I loved it so much that I really got into it and practiced. And then my scooter got stolen. Okay, I had a really nice Italian scooter.
Vespa.
No, it was called a Malaguti Firefox that came from Italy, and I was proud of it. It was like nobody else had one, and it got stolen. So I could have wallowed in the sadness of losing my scooter, but instead, one day he came to me and said, "I want to do a record. Should we do a record together?" I said, "Yeah, and by the way, I've just got my insurance money from my scooter, so let's use that money and make a record." So we made a record. It sold really well in all the record shops in London. Somebody in Miami heard it and said, "I'll sign that record." Signed our next records, and then we just got bigger and bigger and bigger, and then Defected Records came in, signed us. Head Candy took our records and put them on their albums. After doing it for 5 years, I realised that it wasn't quite what I wanted to do in my life, and I got the Levi's job, and I had to make a decision. We were at the point where it was, you do this full time or you don't. So I had to make the decision I didn't want to do it full time. And the guys still do it now. They're fantastically successful, and I carried on doing my career.
Do you regret? Do you regret things in your life? I'm not. Yeah.
No. You know, people always ask, "Do you wish you were still a DJ?" I'm like, no.
Yeah, I'm under the impression that you have absolutely no regrets.
No, because I can say I've done it.
Yeah,
it was a fantastic. I was in Miami. My dream was to DJ at the Ministry of Sound in London, and I DJed at the Ministry of Sound in London. When I reached that point for me, that was my ideal future end state. I'd done it. And
people always want more money, more, you know.
Yeah.
So
And you just got to know. It's about self-awareness and going, you know what? Actually, what I really wanted to do was carry on my career. That's what I loved. I loved more of the people and leading people and all that sort of thing. I wasn't doing much of that DJing. And when something starts as a hobby and turns into something else, you then have to look at what it is that you're doing and say, is that right for me now? Always, leaders always reframe what they're doing. I reframed it and said, it's not for me. And actually, if I carry on doing this, none of us are going to be successful because I'll end up holding them back. And it was a great decision. They've gone off to do great things. My best friend is still my best friend. He was my best man at my wedding last year. And I continue to love what I do.
In photography?
Again, well, sadly my dad died 7 years ago, and that's okay. When he died, he left me a couple of cameras and in all this stuff. And I always remember growing up, he was always taking photographs of us. And when he died, he left me all of our family photos from my great-grandma, my great-great-grandma, all these old, incredible photos. And and it stimulated me to go and learn how to take photos properly. So I went on a couple of courses. I went to St. Martin's, the summer school, and then I decided to book a round-the-world trip and go and travel all around. I travelled around Australia, New Zealand, Thailand, Fiji, all around that side of the world, and shot a whole load of portraits and got really into portrait photography, and still do it to this day. And I sort of shoot weddings and I shoot commissions and stuff, and I love it. It's a really nice way of being able to switch off and focus on something else that's completely in another world, really creative. And of course, I have a 2.5-year-old daughter, and she's very photogenic. So.
Great. Can you be a great leader if the atmosphere around you and your business at the end, the atmosphere in your country isn't that stimulating and supportive? What do you do then? Do you move on, or
in your country or your company?
Country and company. Okay. Like, okay, it's like I think it's a connected thing, Like if the country isn't doing that great, the company isn't doing that great also. But you can change the president and the government and stuff around your country, or can you?
So, I always think that accelerated leaders are brilliant at this whole thing I was talking about earlier about chaos. They thrive on chaos, and the accelerated leader's responsibility is to make sense of all of that. And I go back to the why and turn that into an engaging and inspiring, incredible future end state for the country or the business. Because at a time when things are going wrong, that's when you need leaders. And too often, people just step back and go, I don't really want to lead this. And I've been very fortunate to have a lot of turnaround businesses in my portfolio. So when I was in advertising and some of the businesses I've worked in subsequently, they were around turning the business around. So going in when everything was down, people were not motivated. People didn't want to do what they wanted to do. The market conditions were bad, and turning that around to turn it into a really positive future end state for everybody. And I think that's what accelerated leaders are really good at doing. Renzo Rosso used to say, great, recession's here, fantastic, I love it. Because it means that we can do better business and we can do more business because everyone's shrinking back, and I'm going full on, and I'm going to take that and I'm going to do that and I'm going to do more stuff. Because at the moment of crisis, at the moment of chaos, that's when accelerated leaders stand up and be strong.
Hopefully Croatia will have some more accelerated leaders.
I hope so.
Yeah. What was your biggest leadership drama and how did you solve it?
I guess one of my biggest challenges was when I was at Diesel. I was
Challenges, of course. Sorry.
That's okay.
Let's call it challenge.
Yeah,
okay.
challenge. When I was at Diesel, I was a marketing director for a long period of time, for 4 years, and my boss said to me, look, I want you to be the commercial director as well. I'd actually said, look, I need some more stretch, I need some more growth. And taking over the commercial director side of the business as well is not easy because I didn't have any classic sales training. But accelerated leaders don't shy away from the challenge, right? It's like you've got to go in and I gave the example of Mishkov when he went on board his ship and said, right, okay, I'm now running the ship and it's not performing very well. I'm going to empower everybody to help me get the level of performance that I desire. So I had to.
It's manipulative in a way, and you're engaging everybody else to do your job in a way, not your job like.
But what is your job?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, to make everybody do. Yeah, okay.
So, and it's a good point because managers can tell you what they do, right? Managers can tell you, my job is to make sure that this runs. What leaders do is they say, my job or my role here is to inspire that future end state. How I get there is by using the positive disruption in order to get to where I need to get to and get people to help me get to where I need to get to. What an accelerated leader's role is not, is to do the job all along the way, to do the strategy, do the plans, do the actions, do all the execution. It's to help people do all of that, give them the direction that you need them to do to go into, and let them do it and just get out of the way. So that was my biggest challenge, was how do I go into a sales organisation that had a very traditional way of working as a marketing director? How do I quickly build credibility? How do I quickly get the performance levels up to where they need to be? And how do I have all those tough conversations, as well as learning on the job how to be a commercial director?
Wow, great.
And I did that and grew the business at Diesel as a result.
Great. What kind of business proposals would you never consider? Where do you draw your line? Like, is it politics? Is it oil companies?
I don't. To be honest with you, I don't draw the line anywhere because, for me, there are some people who say I'd never work with cigarette brands, I'd never work with oil companies, I'd never work with banks, and I say, well, that's a great opportunity, right? Because they are the businesses that need turning around the most in terms of the why they exist. Because the why they existed many years ago was actually, for banking, was a really socially brilliant thing. The local bank manager used to lend money to local businesses and local people, and everybody knew the bank manager. And the bank was a social hub. It was there to help support the community. And as the banks got bigger and bigger and greedier and greedier and greedier, they've completely moved away from their why. So now their why is, I just want to make more money. We know what banks do. They've somehow lost the why they did it. So if you can go into banks and say, I'm going to help you understand your why, and I'm going to come back, and then we're going to make your bank. I was talking last night to Havoyan saying, wouldn't it be incredible if all the bankers in London every year said, actually, instead of us making loads of money for ourselves, we should be helping society become more profitable as a result of what we do.
Wow, yeah.
So every year, instead of taking the banking bonuses of whatever, £1 billion, everyone in the whole of the private banking sector said, we're going to give that £1 billion to local causes, and there'll be a school in Hackney, there'll be a new shop built in Newcastle, there'll be all these different things with that money. Suddenly everybody would feel they're prospering from bankers.
Wow,
and people would change their perception of banking. Simple as that.
Well,
and a lot of bankers, I don't know, but I mean a lot of banking would then stop being seen as just greedy people and start to be seen as the fabric of society once again.
Yeah.
And once they get that, people will re-engage with banking. But at the moment, people hate banks, and they're trying to do stuff about it, but people don't believe what they're telling them. And if people don't believe why you do what you do, they don't buy it.
Is traditional and conservative always bad? Because you were always you were talking about pushing the line, always be like one step in front. And I think that I'm asking that because there are a lot of consumers and customers who actually are traditional and conservative.
Yeah, it's not a bad thing. And what I was talking about today, management isn't a bad thing. Right? Every single organisation that's global needs management. There needs to be people who do plan and do look at traditional things. There has to be, otherwise the whole, you can't have chaos all the way through the organisation. And traditional consumers are traditional consumers. All that is cool. There's nothing wrong with them. But sometimes consumers are traditional because they don't really know what an ideal future state could look like for them. So, I mean, there's an old classic, right? When Henry Ford made the car, if you asked the consumer what they wanted, they said, I want a faster horse. When he made the car, they were like, oh my God. And we weren't using iPads 10 years ago. And then someone said, there's a tablet on there and you can access it. They go, no, what are you talking about? It's crazy. So even though consumers are traditional and can be traditional and slightly conservative, you can still innovate and you can still tap into that and engage with them to help understand what it is that you can do as an organisation, particularly as a marketing organisation, as a service to make their lives even better.
Great. Thank you very much for this
That's my
inspiring
pleasure.
conversation.
Thank you.